Hi, everyone. Welcome to Legal Internet Solutions weekly live stream broadcast on LinkedIn. I'm Robin Addis, Lisi's Chief Operating Officer and Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer. Today, we are going to be talking about things we learned at the Legal Marketing Association annual conference, which was last week in Las Vegas, Nevada. Nevada, if you're from out there, I've been corrected before. Couple things. I'm going to be joined by some of my colleagues to talk about their experience. And we're all excited to share with you things that we learned at the conference and from some of the various sessions. Couple housekeeping things first. Shout out to us in the chat if you have any questions for those of you on the live stream right now. Those of you listening to the replay later, hello, and thank you for tuning in. If you have questions, definitely put them in the chat. I'm also really interested to know, for those of you who are watching, did you actually attend the conference? And if you attended any of the sessions that we're talking about, what do you think about them? And if you have any, like I said, if you have any questions, also last thing, at the conference, if you attended, you might have seen Lisi was playing a game, a Las Vegas game, because why not? So everybody had an opportunity to get up to 10 chances to win a $250 Amazon gift card. And I've got the names of the participants in my son's Ghostbusters hat here. And we're going to pick a winner at the end of the live stream broadcast today. So first, we're going to start with my colleague, Lauren Forbes. It was her first time attending the Legal Marketing Association conference. Lauren has been in legal marketing pretty much for as long as I have, but this was her first opportunity to attend. So I'm interested to bring her in to talk about her perspective as a first-time attendee. So everyone, welcome Lauren Forbes to the stream. Hey, Lauren.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So first time attending LMA, and what a place to attend it in Las Vegas of all places.
I know. So excited.
Well, and the best part was, live stream listeners, that Lauren's husband actually was in Las Vegas for another conference at the same time. So he actually accompanied us out and back, which was just hysterical.
He did. Yes, it was great timing.
It was great timing. Yeah. So, okay. So what did you think of the conference overall? I failed to mention this year's conference, the theme was Stretch Beyond Together. And I should take a brief moment really quickly before I turn it over to you, Lauren, to congratulate the ACAC, the Annual Conference Advisory Committee, all of the members on that committee that did a phenomenal job putting together really outstanding content. And of course, the conference co-chairs, Jen Johnson and Deb Ruffins, who did a really great job pulling together that committee and, again, putting together outstanding content. And congratulations to Brenda Plowman, who is the current Legal Marketing Association International President, who she oversaw the whole thing. So without further ado, Lauren, as a first timer, how was the conference for you?
I had a great experience. I mean, anytime when you're going into something that you don't know, I think you're a little nervous. It can be very overwhelming. Don't know what to expect. Again, didn't know a ton of people. Was happy to finally put names with faces. I think having a plan is really important when you go to conferences like these or any conference in general. Have a plan in place, know the agenda, know which sessions that you want to attend. If you get a list ahead of time of maybe who's going to be there, or just know who's going to be there in general, try and connect with them. If you can't there, then obviously follow up is a great, tool to have in your pocket. Follow up with them, social media, phone call, email. Connect with them on social media if you are getting to just know them. If they have a first-time attendee, get together per se, like they had for LMA, attend those. It's great to be among people that are experiencing things for the first time. And obviously being there with my colleagues was great as well. Experiencing things with other people is always a good time.
Yeah. What was your favorite session that you attended, would you say?
So the one session that I really enjoyed was called From Mission Approval to Liftoff, how to craft and launch a sustainable client experience program. That was put on by Allison Feldman and Jennifer Caro from Markham.
Mhm.
I really enjoy presentations where they give concrete examples and data to back it up. I think, it shows what they've done. It shows what worked, what didn't work, how they when it didn't work, how they went about fixing that.
Mhm.
Um, and they had the data to back it up. I really appreciate that rather than some presentation that they kind of like just talk to you. I
Mhm.
like being able to absorb that information so that we can go ahead and use that for our own benefit at some point, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't have to tell anybody who's seen me speak before. I'm also a big data fan. And
Yes.
I think to your point, it gives you something that you can come back to Lisi with, or somebody could go
Hmm.
back to their firm with and say, I saw these people speaking and they shared this really interesting data point. This proves, that we should be doing X, or maybe disproves what we thought we could be doing, and we should rethink how we're doing it. So yeah,
Hmm.
totally agree with you on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, for anybody given presentations, having examples and the data is really important. It shows what they've done and they have stuff to back it up with that proves that it can be done the right way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us out there for your first
Oh,
LMA conference.
thanks.
Many, many to come in the future, I'm sure. And
Yes.
thanks for joining us on the live stream today and talking about what you learned from LMA.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Okay, next I'm going to bring on my colleague Kristen Brophy, who is Lisi's director of client strategy. Hey, Kristen, how are you?
Hi.
So you had a really unique experience at the conference because you went, instead of being an in-house legal marketer, first of all, I think this is your first national conference, right?
First national. I had been to many regional
Okay,
prior to this year, but this was my first national.
cool. And then as a service provider, you were in a completely different position than you had been in before. And I know you expressed that was a lot of huge professional development opportunity for you. And, I'm interested to hear sort of what your big takeaway from that aspect was.
So on a professional development side of things, I think, it was a chance for me to practice what I preach. When I
Mhm.
was working in-house with attorneys, I could, shout to the walls or shout into the void saying, you must do this for networking. Here's your business development initiatives. Here's how you should be attending a conference as a service provider. And I finally got to actually put all of this advice that I had been researching and coaching attorneys on into practice.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So I think I grew a lot
Yeah.
because practicing what I preach, doing what I've always been telling others to do. And it was not only eye-opening, but really it was a big growth opportunity for me. So I love it. And I almost don't want to go back to the in-house side because now I'm just like, oh man, I can do so much more. Now that I got my feet wet a little bit, dipped my toes in that business development side of things and the service provider side of things, I can only go up from here.
I mean,
So
you're never leaving me anyway, so don't worry.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so but like let's get to the meat and potatoes of the sessions because
Yes.
we had 5 of us from the Lisi team at the conference and we made a concerted effort to divide and conquer. We tried not to have more than a couple of us in any one session, so we made sure that we could get to as much as possible. And like Lauren said a minute ago, to try and bring as much back as possible from each of the sessions. So while typically this is 3 things we learned, we have a couple extra sessions that we want to talk about. Because really, again, the content was just above and beyond. It was really fantastic this year. So let's start with talking about the keynote. Richard and Daniel Suskind, who are researchers, renowned researchers who study the future of professions, which is, accountants and architects and lawyers and whatever the case might be. What does the future of professions look like? I had heard their names before, but I had never seen them speak. So this was a really exciting keynote session for me personally, I know Kristen, you and I had sort of talked about it being kind of amazing. And there were so many takeaways. I couldn't even begin to encapsulate, all the data and all of the big takeaways from that session, but just to sort of get into a couple of the points that I found particularly fascinating. So really, one point that I thought was super interesting that Richard Susskind made is that, we are in a period of technological growth where we are, technological evolution started with automation. How can we take things that human beings do and automate those things to make the work process more efficient? And now we're switching to a period of innovation, and true innovation being, coming up with truly new things, not just, automating something to make it more efficient, but coming up with a completely new concept and a completely new process that nobody has really thought of before, inventing essentially. And one thing that he pointed out is that we're really in that decade of innovation, and that the technologies of 20 or 30 years from now nobody's even invented yet, and they're going to completely transform our lives. That the way that we do business, the way that we live, is going to be completely transformed by that. And I was actually, just before this call, I was on a call, just before this live stream, I was on a call with a good friend in the industry. And I said, I'm not an inventor. I know that I'm not an inventor. I am the person who works with an inventor, an innovator, and says, I know how to make that thing happen. So the concept of people who are able to innovate out of thin air, not a blank piece of paper, is like fascinating to me. I don't know, Kristen, what was your big takeaway from that session? Or from
technology is a main driver of change in the legal world. And my big takeaway is that, okay, so I think I'm going to butcher the exact words
It's okay.
of the quote, but the competition that beats you doesn't look like you.
Yeah.
And that competition is implementing technology and AI and processes in a way that maybe you are not. And that's why they are succeeding, because they're not afraid to try new things, new processes, new technologies, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. That's
Right.
why they don't look like you, and that's why they're succeeding and going beyond you. And that's why they're your competition. So I think that's like the one thing that really stuck with me. And like, technology being that main driver of change, because it's, how can legal service providers leverage technology to provide better client service, right? It always goes back to the client. So
Yeah, and my takeaway from exactly that same quote is that we don't know how regulations and rules are going to change and grow over the next 20 or 30 years. Certainly guidance and rules of professional conduct and all of those things are somewhat behind the times, I'd have to say, because they were written before the technology that exists today even existed. Like, talk about how to act on social media. There's guidance out there. It needs to catch up, right? So when I think about the competition that beats you doesn't look like you, I think that doesn't necessarily even mean another law firm, or even what we call an ALSP, an alternative legal service provider. It's one of those areas where somebody who's able to completely innovate and ideate and invent something from scratch is going to be able to come up with a competition that nobody sees coming. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not an inventor. My brain doesn't go there. So I have no concept of where that could come from, but it's going to be really interesting to watch it,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I could go on and on about that session because it really was fascinating. But if you attended the conference, but you didn't get to the keynote, all of the recordings are available for conference attendees, or will be available for conference attendees. So make sure you watch that keynote, because it was really, really great.
Yeah.
Another one I'm going to get a little bit nerdy about, and then I'll give Kristen a chance, is I attended a session about what to learn from the financial performance of firms over the past couple of years. And it was interesting because So Madhav Srinivasan, who is the chief financial officer at a firm I cannot remember, Hogan, not Levels, Hogan something. He was presenting about, just looking at the data and looking at, he was told an anecdote. He sat at a round table with other law firm CFOs, in January, and sort of talking about whether or not there would be a downturn or if anybody was predicting a recession. Everybody looks around, 2020 January. I don't know. I've lost track of time. Whatever, the January before the pandemic, and not a single person in that room could have predicted the recession. And then, the pandemic hit in March 13th, the world shuts down. And he showed a really interesting graph where basically, everything tanked. S&P tanked, and everything, the world, we all know this, we lived through it, world tanked. But what nobody necessarily could have predicted based on historical performance coming out of recessions is the explosive rebound from that tanking. And we know this too. Of course, there's still a lot of repercussions across the economy in terms of jobs and all sorts of things. But in terms of legal performance, if we were to predict what the 2021 AmLaw 100 or AmLaw 200, which is coming out in about a month, if we were to predict what that's going to look like, it's going to look like nothing that we've seen before. And that's what I'm hearing from people in the industry as well, is that it is just far surpassing any numbers, to the point where it was almost like the analysts at ALM had to figure out if they were looking at a video game instead of reality, like were they watching something that was completely made up. So I won't even pretend to be able to dig into the financials eloquently, but it was a fascinating session. And I will tell you, if you attended Legal Week, Patrick Fuller gave a state of the industry report at Legal Week, ALM's Legal Week, which was a couple of weeks before the LMA conference. And that session covered a lot of this data as well. I think maybe that session data would be available to any Legal Week attendees. Okay, I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to let Kristen talk about one of the sessions that she went to. The focus of that was how small and mid-sized firms can punch above their weight by leveraging a strong brand. So tell us about that one, Kristen.
So this session just spoke to me in a lot of different ways. And it's not solely because I have a girl crush on Carolyn Manning, who was the speaker of that session, which is true. I do. But so for context, I used to work at Mintz and used to work with Carolyn, and attending this session and seeing where Mintz has come, or how far Mintz has come since I left the firm in, I think 2016 is when I left Mintz. It is just amazing, like what they've done with their brand and how they have exploded into what Passel calls a destination firm. So this particular panel was run by Passel with Eugene McCormick, and he was kind of guiding the conversation that Carolyn was having, and talking about how Mintz has become this all-encompassing brand for client service, and how every single thing that you do has to have the client in mind. And that's not just marketing, that's not just business development, that is every single person in the firm. And so that's how they became this destination firm. And one of the things that really stuck with me that Carolyn said was, if you have been in your role for 3 or more years, quit and come back to it. Meaning not leave the company, not leave your role, like do a reset in your mind of like, okay, time to reset, time to start fresh. And she actually did that herself and went around and interviewed, different people in the firm, like, okay, what's going on? What are we doing well? What are we not doing? And her, serving her clients as the CMO, serving her clients who are her attorneys and who are, this legal service providers that are going out there and getting the business. And it really just spoke to me like, yeah, you can be at the same company for a long time, but unless you're quitting in your mind and resetting, then you're not going to come up with any fresh ideas. You're not going to enhance your brand. You're not going to effectively communicate, your services to potential clients, and you're not going to really give good client service to the existing clients. So that is one point that really stuck with me. Another point that really stuck with me was she said that the brands who do it well, as I mentioned earlier, was that the brands who do it well, like Apple, Amazon, those really strong brands, they have the user experience in mind every single step of the way.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge Apple user. And so that spoke to me as in like, oh yeah, Apple really does think of everything. Like my watch talks to my iMac, which talks to my iPad, which talks to my iPhone, which talks to, everything. And everything is beautifully designed, easy to hold, and works well and works and integrates seamlessly with one another. And that's the same sort of thing that should be happening inside law firms for client service. You take that brand, and then every single piece of that brand, every single step of the way has that client in mind and has what the client needs in mind. So that's stuck with me too. And that really exploded Mints from, Mintz Levin, I'm going to butcher the name, I apologize, Mintz Levin, Confer, and Popio PC to what's now known as Mints.
Yeah.
And it just, seeing that evolution and having Carolyn talk through that evolution was a really powerful thing, particularly having been a former employee of Mintz. And I highly recommend anyone who didn't attend that session to go back and watch it, because there's just, so many different ways that she effectively communicated the brand strategy of Mintz. Like, what are the 9 lives of a piece of content? What are you doing for client service? What is every other person at the firm, not just the attorneys, doing to promote the firm's brand? What are the marketing people doing? What are the IT people doing? What are the HR people doing? Are they producing content? Are they sharing content? So there are just so many different moving pieces that she talked about that I think everybody should listen. If they didn't attend that session, but you did attend the conference, watch the recording. Totally worth it.
Yeah, I know. I was sort of bummed that wasn't the session that I got to go to, but yeah, it was. I'm excited to actually go back and watch the replay of that one, because I know that just even based on what you've said, there's so much that we're going to be able to apply, and that firms at any size really could apply.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, Mintz is an AmLaw, or was an AmLaw 100 firm when I was working there. I don't know if it still is. That's embarrassing for me to admit that I don't know that off the top of my head. But
you don't have the AmLaw 100 memorized?
No, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, they're a huge firm, and they're one of the largest 3 firms in Boston, where I am. So it's very interesting to take all of these strategies and these tactics and apply them to smaller firms, and then which means we can apply them to the mid-sized firms and the small firms that we work with our clients. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to cheat a little bit with this next one, because I was one of the presenters on the session, Blurring Lines, the Growing Importance of an Omnichannel Marketing Strategy.
It's not cheating that much. I attended it. So
you attended it, but here's why I think it's valid to sort of talk about it. I learned a lot in preparing for it. So I'm going to share some of those data points. Speaking of, going back to Lauren's point before, some of the data points that I shared with the attendees in the room, because, I won't butcher or beat up on law firm marketing as a profession, but we all know that we are not at the bleeding edge of marketing innovation. And that just has a lot to do with the fact that the profession on the whole is relatively risk averse, and, is not comfortable most firms are not comfortable being on the bleeding edge of things, and certainly not corporate firms. There's just too much scary, out there, especially in a world where technology and social media and all these different channels are evolving and popping up so quickly. It's just scary. Okay, fine. And this really ties to the point you just made a minute ago about a unified user experience. Having an omni-channel strategy is what helps direct the thought process for that unified user experience, or client experience in our case. So an omni-channel strategy, funny enough, my co-presenters and I all disagreed on the definition of this to a certain degree. And as I said on a follow-up podcast that I just recorded, and that I think was released last week for Lisi, if you want to check it out on our All the Things podcast, It's really easy to find a definition that fits what you're looking for, but it sometimes can be very hard for everybody to find a definition that everybody can agree on, because everybody can find the definition of a thing that they want to see. But the definition that we ultimately agreed on is that omnichannel is the high-level strategy to ensure an organization's brand is accessible across all channels and provides that seamless experience for customers and prospects, no matter what the channel. So omnichannel is that. And then multi-channel are the tactics that the omnichannel strategy defines. It's multi-channel is that tactic that the channels use within the campaign. Not all campaigns can or should be omnichannel in nature. Lots of campaigns might only touch on a very narrow few channels, but they are, that's part of the broader omni-channel strategy. Okay, so I'm just going to run down some data because nerd, but also I think it's really, really interesting. So according to a Forrester report, 44% of organizations say that integrating, say the number one challenge is integrating back office technology in terms of being a barrier to creating an omni-channel experience. We know this is the truth in law firms. You've got a CRM, you've got an email marketing tool, you've got your social scheduler, you've got whatever. And it takes a lot of human capital or human brain power to make sure that all of the information goes between those systems. Because I won't over nerd you with this, but the fact of the matter is that those systems were built independent of one another. And it can cost a lot of money to go back and retrofit an integration. So now technologies today, like a technology like a marketing automation tool like HubSpot has all of those things I just listed all in one place. There are a gajillion other technologies that do similarly, can take care of all of those things. But some of these dinosaur technologies are so deeply entrenched in firms that the thought process of completely overhauling those systems is overwhelming, understandably so. So anyway, that technology barrier is a huge one when it comes to having a fully integrated omni-channel strategy. So here's the thing. You have to know what the gaps are in your technology to help choose the right channels. In terms of challenges to having the right technology, budget, resources. Some of these technologies can cost a lot of money, or just, having both technologies, if you are so bold as to put it in your budget to change over to a new tool, you still have to maybe pay that annual licensing fee for your old technology, and it can get really expensive. And then who are you going to have to actually do the implementation? And we talked a little bit about outsourcing resources, and I'm not going to go down that whole path here. Again, I talked a lot about it on the podcast we did last week, but if you don't have the resources in-house, you likely will need to outsource, and that's okay, because outsourcing to an outsourced provider, outsourced resource, you're outsourcing that project, that whatever, that implementation to a team of people who've probably done it a gajillion times and can do it much faster and more efficiently than you could potentially yourself. Okay, so a couple more data points. According to Gartner, in business-to-business situations, buyers spend less than 20% of their buying journey speaking with potential suppliers. So I get it. I hear lawyers in the back of my head saying, I get my business through referrals. It's all about networking. It's all about the relationships I have. And they're right. I appreciate that is where they have gotten most of their business for most of their career, if not their entire career. But the fact of the matter is that buyers, the way that people buy services is evolving and it is changing. So those relationships are never going to go away as a main part of B2B world, of the B2B world. But more and more people want to do research and understand what they could be buying before they even pick up that phone. So the referral comes, but they want to check out your LinkedIn profile. They want to check out your firm's website. They want to see what you stand for on social media, what your firm stands for on social media before they even connect with you. So keep that in mind as part of your omni-channel strategy. According to the Content Marketing Institute, only 48% of the respondents to a survey craft content based on specific stages of the buyer's journey. So meaning if you have somebody who's at that top of the funnel, if somebody who's just sort of learning and discovering, that's different content than if somebody who's maybe right before they are actually making a hiring decision or a selection. And crafting that content along that funnel that's customized to that journey is actually really critical in terms of an omni-channel strategy. But lo and behold, 70% of marketers, again, according to the same strategy, lack a consistent or integrated strategy. Okay, here's where this all comes to play. The kicker is that companies, professional services companies with extremely strong omni-channel customer engagement, so not just the strategy, but you've actually built it up where you have sustained engagement from your desired audience, see a 9.5% year-over-year increase in annual revenue compared to 3.4% for weak omnichannel companies. So all of these things I've been telling you, having a strong strategy, having the technologies and the integrations and the infrastructure to back it up, outsourcing to the right people, all of that is the bedrock upon which that engagement is built. And so if you have those things in place and you start to get your omnichannel strategy building momentum, that is where you can get to a point where you're really seeing the rubber hit the road and start to see it pay off. It's not going to happen where, day 2 after implementing these things, everybody wants it to. It's going to take time. We have to invest the time now. So I'm sorry I cheated a little bit since I was the presenter and Kristen did attend.
I did attend.
Yeah, you did attend. But I appreciate sort of the opportunity because I feel so strongly about the topic that it's important to share the content out there.
Well, in theme and the themes that you were, recapping it as you were just speaking from your presentation were also carried in multiple panels and multiple sessions that I attended throughout LMA. So, it's not a foreign concept, and it's definitely something that we all need to hear, even if we don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, what was I going to go to next? Sorry, lost track of it because I realized that we're like 31 minutes into this. But again, if anybody,
we could talk for hours and probably still not cover it all.
I know. Okay,
April Fools, we're actually going to be here all day. Not just a quick live stream.
Yeah, right. Not just 3 things. It's all the conference for 3 days. Okay, last one before we finally get to drawing the name. How can firms leverage podcasts and other underutilized mediums to dominate their niche? So, Kristen, I'm going to kick this one to you. You and I both attended this session, which I think had a lot of, again, some good data and insights about podcasting in it.
Yes. So this session, wow, I almost said section, but this session was really great because it just reinforced how I already feel about podcasts for law firms.
Yeah.
So the speaker, which I thought I had his name written down. Do you have his name by any chance? It's Robert.
No, not off the top of my head. He's from the Law Pods podcast.
Yes. Yeah. And he said that he had data that he said, podcasters actually, and I can pull up this data because I have it saved. Mm-hmm. A lot of attorneys will say, well, the podcast market is oversaturated. I can't have podcasts. So the data that he provided said, okay, there are 31.7 million blogs, 51 million YouTube channels, mm-hmm. and only 2 million podcasts.
Right.
Like, that's just astounding to me where, there's this thought that there are too many podcasts out there. It's oversaturated. Like, your podcast isn't going to break into the market. But that data totally doesn't back that up. Right. There are way more blogs, way more YouTube channels, way more Twitter feeds even. Podcast is this, as he said, plug and play content machine because mm-hmm. there aren't as many out there. And he had a line kind of like the Apple ad campaign. There's an app for that back in the day. He said, there's a podcast for that. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to learn something very specific, and he used this example as well in his presentation, like different crocheting, there's a podcast for different crocheting techniques and different knitting techniques. Mm-hmm. There's a podcast for, how to replace your dishwasher. There are podcasts for literally everything. Mm-hmm. And it's important for the legal industry to have that representation in that like big foray of podcasts, because maybe somebody's looking for, generalized legal advice, and you'll establish yourself as a thought leader on that podcast. Someone could find you because that's what they're looking for, and then hire your firm. So, plug and play content machine. You record the sound clip, you can have the transcript on your website and post it. And like, this is stuff that we do ourselves at Lisi. So
Yeah.
Great session that really reinforced what we believed to be true about podcast success. So
yeah, I'm going to tell you. So we have a client that we're working on a podcast for now. And it's funny because we were having a conversation this morning. The lawyers they're like, their hearts are in it and they are believers in what we're doing. But, they're a little bit nervous about speaking kind of like we're doing now, conversationally and really getting it out there. So I would say if you are interested in having a podcast, the first thing you need to do is coach your lawyers. So you give them all this data, tell them that they're going to be effective, and then start coaching them on how to just feel comfortable having a conversation that happens to be recorded, because that is the best, in my personal opinion. The best type of podcast is when you get to be like a fly on the wall between two really smart people having a conversation about things that really interest them. Just coaching your lawyers to feel comfortable having that sort of conversational tone is, in my opinion, the first step after you convince them that they should do it.
Yep, absolutely. Because, and the presenter said this as well, the power of storytelling brings, those listeners into your world. It gives that connection to your potential clients, to your audience, that you might not otherwise have if you weren't having that normal conversation with them. And, I do this all the time, and I know you quote me on it. People like to do business with people.
Yeah.
They're not doing business with, a brand, or they're not doing business with a company. They are doing business with you because they have a connection with you.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So for all of you who have so steadfastly stayed tuned in to us being complete geeks this whole time, I'm going to do this drawing. So we
need a drum roll.
Yeah, but I know. Okay, so let's see who it is. Okay, and the winner of our $250 gift card, and thanks goes to this person for participating in the Lisi Vegas game, is Amy Verhulst from Coates Rose PC. Congratulations, Amy!
Yay! Congratulations, Amy!
We will be in touch to talk with you about getting you your gift card. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for staying on this ride with us. And tune in next week. Next week, we will have our Ask Me Anything session. And our theme for the month of April is websites and SEO. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that. And have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you later.
Have a nice weekend.